episode 436 of the DFL Rundown is always brought to you by Bet365. It's never ordinary at Bet365. You can get in the game, all sorts of fun. Use the promo code NATION, N-A-T-I-O-N. You got to be 19 years of age or older to play. NFL Conference Weekend. You've got a big weekend in the NHL, NBA, and more. Have some fun at Bet365. I'm Jason Greger. Welcome in Mike Rupp, my regular Friday co-host. Rupper, how you doing?
I am good. Busy week this week, but it feels good. All these games coming down the stretch before the Olympic break. Just this last push and see if we can get some movement in the standings finally.
Yeah, we got 2 weeks essentially until they break for the Olympics on Thursday, the 5th of February. And speaking of the Olympics, we got some guys that have been pulled out, defensemen. And the big one in your country, in the U.S., Seth Jones is out. Lacombe Jackson's in. And, man, there's lots of people freaking out. There's no Lane Hutson, Adam Fox. What are they doing? What do you make of the Lacombe Jackson addition?
So the big thing for me, I was pumped to see Seth Jones because he kind of fulfilled that right hand vacancy I thought that you had with no Adam Fox, and he's rangy. I think Seth Jones is like 6'3", defends well. His game's kind of back to where it once used to be. So now him going down, I'm thinking to myself, well, do you replace that with a righty? Do you force that? You go Jackson Lacombe, which is fantastic. He's a fantastic player. Can do a little bit of everything, but I think the main thing that he could do really well is kill penalties. He's an elite penalty killer, and you already have a lot of them on the back end there. And I wouldn't say a lot. You have some pretty good stalwarts back there as far as what they could do on the PK for Team USA. You've got Jacob Slavin. I mean, Jake Sanderson's really adept at killing penalties. But Jackson Lacombe is going to be right in the thick of it there. And so I find I was kind of doing some digging on it. And yes, there's a conversation there. I mean, Lane Hutson, it just feels like he's the oddball out. And you got a real conversation that he should be there. But I think what we're starting to see is you need specialized players for this. And we've talked about it ad nauseum. You've got Quinn Hughes. You've got, Zach Werenski. You kind of got the offensive power play guys situated. So I started digging a little bit more. And as an American, I'm kind of concerned for the Team USA PK. And it might be nitpicking a little bit, but we're talking the best of the best. I think that's why this Jackson Lacombe decision goes down. But then I started thinking to myself, okay, let's look into some of these players on Team USA up front. I mean, you got Austin Matthews can certainly kill penalties. Jack Eichel can kill penalties. But those are two guys I think of that have to be Americans' best players offensively. Like, I don't know if I want to taxi them with that. And I also would say, yes, they're certainly suitable to kill penalties, but that they're not specialty players on the PK. So all of the kind of hoopla in regards to no Cole Caulfield, no Alex DeBrincat, no Jason Robertson, it's starting to make sense now why you have a JT Miller, Vinny Trocheck, and Brock Nelson. Those are your PK guys. We knew that. But I just think that when you look across the board to your country, you've got lockdown specialty guys on the PK. You got Anthony Cirelli, might be the best PK guy in the league. You've got Brandon Hagel. He's right there with them. You've got Sam Reinhart, who's an elite penalty killer. It's funny when you think about it because players can kill penalties on both teams, but it's a difference with killing penalties. Maybe on your NHL team, you're the second unit, maybe even the third unit of a PK if you extend that out a little bit. That's not going to cut it, I think, when you're going against a power play that has Sidney Crosby, has Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar. I think you need some specialty guys. So it's all starting to make sense for me now. I think Team USA feels a little vulnerable on that position, and they've made a lot of decisions trying to cover that up.
Well, if you look at the regular season numbers, American forwards who have killed even 100 minutes in penalties, none. The most is Brock Nelson at 86, and then you've got Dylan Larkin at 81, Matt Boldy at 80, right? So, maybe they use those guys, even you mentioned guys like JT Miller, they're not even up there. So now Trocheck's being injured, so that probably impacts it a little bit there. And I even look at Jackson Lacombe, like if I look at the back end, Like Hughes, Faber, Werenski, Slavin, those guys are no-brainers. They're playing every game, right? I'd probably put in Charlie McAvoy. But then I look and say, okay, well, I probably have Jake Sanderson in because he kills the most penalties of any American defenseman. That I'm not even sure Jackson Lacombe is going to play. We'll see. So, but the other thing he adds is if you added Lane Hutson, you've already got Quinn Hughes, you've already got Faber. I just don't know how many, and size does matter. It does, and especially in a rink that's a little bit smaller, Rupper. Not by much, but slight dimensions. And that's not saying he can't play, but if you have all of that, it's just smaller guys take up less space. So time and space is the biggest thing you want to eliminate, especially when it's best on best. So I can understand on one hand the frustration for some American fans saying, hey, why the hell isn't Lane Hutson here? I get it. Because if you look at his numbers, pucks on his stick, he's one of the most dangerous guys in the league. It's no question. But when it's best on best, it's how are you defending them? And like, I'm assuming Hughes and Faber are going to play together. They're playing together in the regular season. Like, why the hell wouldn't you play them together in this tournament? So, maybe you could say, hey, well, we can still have Lane Hutson play on a pairing with Slavin, although, I'm not sold. I want to do that, to be honest. So it'd be a matter of where you fit in. But Jackson Lacombe, I will say this. I think there's a lot of people on the East Coast who simply don't watch the Ducks very often. Yeah. And I understand it, right? It's up later. It's 3 hours later. Jackson Lacombe is really good, and he skates incredibly well. So, I think a lot of people in the East might be surprised when they see Jackson Lacombe if he gets into this tournament, just what he can do, because he's a little bit bigger, sure, but he is incredibly mobile. Like, man, when I watched him last year, especially, he was phenomenal in the games I watched. And I've watched more Ducks games this year than I have probably in the last decade because they've been way more competitive.
He's an insurance policy because we talked at the top that he can kill penalties, and that's insurance policy in that category. Jacob Slavin hasn't played much hockey this year. So, if you have, heaven forbid, him drop out or any injury to a PK guy, this is already a point of emphasis. They want to be strong or get stronger on the PK. So we talked about that. But Jackson Lacombe, he can get going on the offense too. So what do you need? If you sit here and you're going to be like, all right, again, we don't want any injuries, but if there's injury for Zach Werenski, Jackson Lacombe could jump in there, be a PP2 guy. Like he could do all those things, and he's got that great skating ability. So he's got kind of all the areas covered, a little bit of an insurance policy. I like the pick, but you mentioned it. The size does matter. He's 6'2". He's got that long reach. I think that's an area that Team USA wants to have in the lineup.
Yeah. No, quite. Now, hey, Lane Hutson's an unreal skater too, but I'm just saying, like him and Jackson Lacombe, if you look at it, they're similar in lots of areas of their game when it comes to speed, right? Lacombe shoots the puck harder. Obviously, I think Hudson's a way better passer. He's a much more dynamic player with the puck on their stick. There's no debate about it. USA will come down to if they lack offense, then that's where they're going to look and say, hey, we missed Lane Hutson. But if they're giving up too many goals, and to be honest, like Team USA's got the best schedule in the opening round. Their pool's the weakest. They should go 3-0, and it probably should get them the number one seed because in theory they should have the best goals for against, simply because the teams are playing. Like they don't have Canada, Finland, Sweden, Czechia. None of them are in their pool. So that's the advantage that they have. And, if they take advantage of that, that should give them the most favorable schedule until they get to the semifinal. Because if they're the number one seed, then they're going to take on the number 8 seed in the quarterfinal.
Hey, don't butter us up, Greggs. We don't need that. Don't butter us up saying that because here's what's going to happen. They're going to get some of these. They're going to get some of these ones that you can be in a little bit of cruise control. Then they're going to get punched in the mouth when they play against the first team. So that's something that you got to take advantage of. There's just something that makes me nervous before this tournament. I don't know. I just feel like there's going to be a little bit of a struggle here with Team USA, and it might actually be in one of those first games. Like I feel like we see it in World Juniors, we see it in these international stages where there's just like an eye-opener game, like a hey, this started. How are you going to react? And sometimes we see teams in the past, whether it's Canada, US, or any other country, that's the wake-up call they needed. And then some of them is just a precursor of like, they're just not dialed in for the tournament. So I don't know, man. I'm nervous by that. Once they finally reach that team that's a true contender for the gold, that it's going to be a tough one.
Well, Latvia always is a scrappy team in these tournaments, man. Like they don't go easily by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah. So you could be right, but on paper, there's no doubt that USA has the advantage, and good for them.
Yes.
Of having the advantage at the Olympics, at least to start for their pool goals. Now, speaking of the USA, so I've been seeing all the stories, and everybody in the USA is talking about, Mike Madano is following around Patrick Kane. So I'm like, what am I missing? Because if you go to NHL.com, most points by an American player is Brett Hall with 1391, right? Then Madano, then at 1374, and then Kane's at 1372. Now, I know they're saying U.S.-born player. What? Like, what am I missing? The NHL's own website under nationalities says Brett Hall. So, like, does Brett Hall, who is a pretty big part of the 1996 World Cup, right? Most goals. What am I don't really, so what am I missing here, Rupper? I don't really understand it. Well, is it just because Brett Hall wasn't born in the USA, but he's the most points American player? What the hell's happening?
I didn't even think about this till you brought it up. It's a great point. Yeah, I think that the way it's phrased, American born, is what we're talking about here. But at the end of the day, I don't think anybody has any questions if Brett Hall was a U.S. player. I mean, he was huge. I mean, when you think about all the all-time greats and some of the guys that I remember I was watching as a young American playing the game. I think of Chris Chelios. I think of Mike Madano. I think of I think of Jeremy Roenick. I certainly think of Brett Hall. Like, so I don't know. It's something that's really interesting. At the end of the day, I don't know if it mattered. I think Patty Kane passes both of them because he's close here and he's still very effective player. He's going to be playing longer. But to your point, like, we're having this. Are we going to have this ceremony for second place? Because it is second place. If you're going to move some words around, it's first place. But I still feel like, when you look at that, Brett Hall is still number one.
Does U.S. born matter more than U.S. player? Like, I don't know. Maybe I've never really seen that before, because I was like, why is Mike Madano, like, why are they talking about Madano? I'm like, God, maybe I'm losing my mind here, but I'm pretty sure Brett Hall has the most points of an American player. And then went on this morning, and sure enough, at the NHL's website, and you go under nationalities, American, Brett Hall's number one. So I guess Patty Kane will have two ceremony chases this year. There's one for U.S. born, and then there's one for most by a U.S. player, which is somewhat confusing to me. So basically what I'm uncovering here is the greatest American player is still Canadian, is what I'm understanding. The way they're doing this, Brett Hall is like the greatest American who happens to be Canadian.
Yeah. You guys are going to claim him then for this? Yeah, no, it's no, you got a point there. Yeah, that's pretty impressive when you look at this list here. I mean, I don't know.
Do you think Matthews? Yeah, like Matthews will play long enough to probably pass Patrick Kane, won't he?
You would think, right? I would. Yeah, I think he's got a legitimate chance there. I don't know, maybe the last year and a half, you're thinking that could change, but prior to that, I think you'd definitely say that that's Austin Matthews to take over. But he's starting to find his game again. He's been pretty good as of late. I think the whole thing and all this clearly is health, but for Austin Matthews, even more so. If Austin Matthews can be, because I just think back in when I was younger, being a baseball fan, remember Ken Griffey Jr. was on this like ridiculous pace for home runs and career home runs. And he had his injuries, and the pace he was on was going to just demolish everything. And then, that kind of threw a wrench in it. So that's the only thing for pretty much any player on that list. But when you're looking there, I think there's one guy from active players right now that I'd say has a legitimate chance in regards to passing that. I think it is Austin Matthews.
And if he does, like when I look at Patrick Kane, and I know there's the discussion, is Patrick Kane the greatest American player? And, it's a good discussion. Mike Madano was a hell of a player. Brett Hall obviously was, Brett Hall is the greatest goal scorer for sure to this point. And Austin Matthews might give him a run for that. I don't think there's any question. But when you go to overall player, like the guy who's active right now, who might get in the conversation would be Quinn Hughes. If we're talking like best player. And like Chris Chelios was an elite player for a long time. Like, look at the personal awards that he won, right? But you look at his personal accolades. I know that it's hard sometimes to compare a forward to a defenseman, and I get it. But like Bobby Orr is always in the conversation of top players of all time, right? He's a defenseman. Why is Chris Chelios not higher up in the American sphere when it comes to greatest American players?
I don't know. I think a lot of people would have Chris Chelios right up there. Maybe it's. I wonder if it's sometimes because Chelly played so long that maybe some of the last years of Chris Chelios playing didn't look like what he was early on. And that goes for every single player that plays in the NHL for the most part. I wonder if people forget how great he was. The games played, the durability, the toughness, both sides of the puck. I mean, you think back to early Chris Chelios. I mean, I was a young kid, but I knew who Chris Chelios was. And I think most players playing against him did as well. So, it's something that, maybe doesn't get enough love. Because I feel like sometimes when you have so many games played, for whatever reason, if this makes any sense, I think people take that differently than, like, for example, like, even if we're going all time games played by defensemen in the NHL, like I think Scott Stevens, you think of him with hits. Like Scotty was a hell of a defenseman, and he could do a lot of different things in his career. But I think that because he played so long, people are like, oh, well, he's got those numbers because he played for so long. You forget what he did in his prime. And maybe that's how I think about Chris Chelios too. So, I mean, you're bang on there with Chelly. But I wonder also, because this would go in Chelios's favor, but in Patrick Kane's favor, this is where I think winning matters too. And those 3 cups that Patty Kane has, it's going to be tough. So I think, like, if Austin Matthews passes in points, I don't necessarily think you could just say that's the best all-time American-born player. I agree. Still think that's Patty Kane. I think he is right now the all-time best player.
Well, yeah, because when you look like at Austin Matthews and you look at his playoff success, it's just not there, right? Now, Scotty Stevens won 3 cups with New Jersey. I do think a lot of people maybe forget those years. Or Scott Stevens was an absolute train, could hit guys. And I know people show the highlights of his big hits. I mean, you know how many hits Scotty Stevens had that were clean even in today's game that rock guys? Like, he was an absolute jackhammer. He would pummel guys and fought. Look how many years he had 200 plus penalty minutes. How many years he'd have, 70 points as a defenseman, 60 points as a defenseman. And he was a hell of a player, and probably gets overlooked sometimes at how good he was. And, when I look at other Americans, but Chris Chelios, I've always Chris Chelios had a really good year. Norris Trophy winner, played 1,651 games. I'm looking it up as we speak right now. Like, he was a dominant player, man, he had a lot of 70 and 60 point seasons. Obviously not the offense of today's game, but it's a little bit different, right? In the late 90s, there wasn't the same offense that you have now. But like, Chelios was a number 1 defenseman in Montreal, in Chicago, and then obviously in Detroit a little bit, not the final few years of his career. And then obviously the first few years you had Nick Lidstrom, he was pretty damn good. But I've always kind of been interested in Chelios when, like, people talk Kane and they talk McDaniel and they talk Hall. And I'm always kind of like, I thought Chelios should be right up there in the greatest American players of all time. Like, I think might be Rupper that he rubbed some people the wrong way in how he spoke and, outspoken against the PA. I think that might hurt him in the folklore of things, but I'm just talking player on the ice. Player on the ice. Chris Chelios was pretty damn elite, and that guy could play forever. Like, he logged a ton of minutes all the time.
Yeah, no, he was incredible. I wonder though, when you're going over some of those numbers, what I'm thinking about, and everybody's going to have their own way of looking at it. Do you and our viewers or listeners have an exchange rate of points from the 90s to today? Like, how do you compare different generations of players when the game changes? Rules have changed. Overtime rules have changed. Like, there's much more things in place now to promote offense, clearly. I don't think anybody would deny that. But what would like a 60, 70 point season back in the 90s mean for a defenseman nowadays? You know what I mean? Because that's a hell of a defenseman today. Are you kidding me? And to bring all the attributes. All the attributes defensively that those guys bring too.
Yes. Well, I think sometimes people forget, okay, you know what, Makar, and they had Roman Josi and you had Erik Karlsson, but still 70 points is still often, a pretty big high bar for the vast majority of the players. Even in today's game where there's, the power plays are way better than like the power play percentage overall is way better. But last year there was 3 defensemen who had 70 points, right? Makar, Werenski, and Hughes. And those are kind of the guys and I think what's his name? Makar had over 90, right? But I think only 1 or 2 over 80. So it has changed. The other thing is I always kind of look at it. How does it compare in your era, right? Because to compare other eras is you have to factor in not just the games, but Rupper, you got to factor in travel. You got to factor in nutrition. You got to factor in the training. Like these players in the 90s didn't have the same education for training. They didn't have teams having a sports psychologist. Teams didn't have a sleep site, a person, okay, now we're going to track our sleep for everybody on the team. Like there's massive different things that go on. So to me, it's more of, I look at it and I know that Paul Paduti has done you compare things, but they kind of just compare it based on goals per game. And then you kind of siphon it down for that. And that's one thing. But anytime you do that in the 80s, just take out Gretzky.
Yeah.
Take out Gretzky and look how much it drops without him, right? Like it's wild. So I don't even know if you can do that. So there's no perfect mathematical equation. It's always a projection. How would guys today handle the physicality of the 90s? Because you can't deny that. The game was infinitely more physical, clutching and grabbing, all that stuff. You had lots of your top end guys, you're like Cale Makar in the 90s would fight 3 times a year, Rupper. That's just a fact, right? Like Chris Chelios, Scott Stevens, your top guys, right? Scott Niedermayer, for goodness sakes, one of the quietest guys. He even fought a few times. Like it's just a different game. So you have to always factor in all of that. Like it's a nice equation, but I don't think there's ever going to be a perfect formula to look at it.
So as you're talking about maybe some of the amenities that were not in place back in those days, I got a funny one because we coming out of whatever, I think it was even the lockout in that 04-05 time. That's when we started seeing in the CBA, I believe there was a thread count that had to be in place at hotels. And I remember is this for real? Is this real life? And I'm one that benefited. I'm not one to be like, I had to walk to school both ways uphill in the snow. I'm not one of those people. I was living the good life, staying in those hotels with high thread count, Ritz-Carltons, and whatever you want to say. There's this hotel. I got to take a picture of it because it's I'm in Jersey here, and up near the Meadowlands where the Continental Airlines Arena was for the Devils for all those years. There's not a ton around there for people that know the area as far as hotels. There's really not. You'd think with Giant Stadium being there, this arena being there, New York City, there's not a ton of nice hotels right there. You'd have to go in the city, which is, a mile away, but could take you an hour and a half to get to. So there's this one hotel. I'm going to snap a picture of it, Greg's, and send it to you. I drive by it almost every day going to the NHL Network. I was told that this is where the road teams used to stay. And it looked like this back when I was playing in the early 2000s. It's called the Meadowlands Motel or something. It is the seediest looking place. It looks terrible. And it's always looked like that. And I talked to guys who were like, yeah, we used to stay there. I'm like, no way. You guys stayed there? Yep, we used to stay there. I'm like, what a difference.
Send that picture. Send it to Patty, and we'll see if he could pull it up on the show before the show ends today. You send it to Pat. That would be
it's wild.
Oh, hey,
I'm going to look it up here, but it's just not to make fun of it is to make fun of the place because it's not a nice hotel, but I don't think it ever was. But these guys, the things that they had to deal with during those times, and again, that wasn't me, so I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I was on the side where we were had all the red carpet pulled out for us.
Red count, look in the 80s. They flew a coach, right? So you didn't have your own charter, Rupper. And I don't know, did you ever play in the league where you didn't have a charter?
So I came in, I got drafted in 98. I went to Islander training camp, and being like a first round pick, I knew I was going back to play in the OHL, but they would keep you around for a long time. I didn't get any games, but I got kept all the way up to like basically we'd break camp. I think they wanted me to see how NHL works a little bit. So I remember when they had like one of the first meetings, Mike Milbury's GM came in, and I have nothing to compare to, but I just got the reaction of all the other guys with the Islanders. He came in and they announced that they're going to be flying commercial that year. And they announced there's a stick budget. Don't remember what it was. Let's say that was a time when it was, you had wood sticks still, but you had shafts and blades. A lot of guys are transitioned into that, but they basically would say like, you got an allowance of 24 shafts and, 48 blades or whatever the number is, which really is not that much. Like I played with many, many guys in my career that have new sticks every single game. So you do the math on that. So that was kind of the big eye opener. I never had to fly. I never had to fly commercial. It was always, charter, but it was kind of at the tail end right there around like 99, 2000.
Yeah, and so that's my point. But I know you go back to the 80s, and like they'd be sitting in airports. They played back to back. Heck, in the playoffs in the 80s, people, they played 4 games in 5 nights in the opening round to start the playoffs. And so now that's only one flight. I get it. But today's athletes, at times when I hear how hard it is, I'm like, let's maybe pump the brakes a little bit on hard. Like, do today's athletes have to play a longer game? Do they have to play a more physical game? How is it so much more physically taxing? I think at times we have to remind people, and because they'll talk about, because you give them that excuse, oh, it's tired, they're playing back to back. What, guys in the 80s never played back to back? They didn't fly. You know what? They didn't get to fly on their own charter, and they stayed in seedy hotels, as Rupper pointed out. And you know what? You were having pizza after the game. You weren't having some latte smoothie with green veggies in it or anything. Like there's just. And that's why anytime someone compares the younger, I hear it from young fans all the time and young players, and and I get it, it's everybody's always kind of more about their era. And I'm not saying any era is better, but it's infinitely different. And today's era has way more advantages to maximize your physical capabilities.
And as it should. So, you know what I mean? But like, that's the thing is, it brings me to John Tortorella used to say this all the time. And I love it because we speak so much about how the game, or just anything in life, like 90% is mental. And, I don't know what that number is because it's physically demanding, especially this year's schedule for these players. It's demanding, but it's funny when Torts would be very big on this, where he would just come in the room, and because the talk in the media, you're getting interviewed after practice, after games. You're like, how does it feel right now? You guys got this stretch of, 11 games and 20 nights or whatever it is. And he would say, because he knew we were hearing it from the outside. And he was just like, you are not tired. That's all I remember. You always say, do not listen to them. They're full of shit. You are not tired. We have prepared for this. And it's such a way to place your mind. Yeah. Of course, you're going to feel things, but like if you can make your mind tell yourself you're not tired, like I feel like that could do a lot for you, because all these situations, if just the way we're talking about it in the past too, not to compare and say, oh, that was so much worse. You know what? You're not tired. We get it pretty good. Like you tell yourself those things. I think that's half the battle for what some of these guys maybe might be going through this year.
I totally agree with that. Now let's get to some of the games going on right now. The Buffalo Sabres last night, big win over the Montreal Canadiens. When you look at where the Sabres have been now for a decade, Rupper, and I know it's only a game in late January, but the Buffalo Sabres, everybody knows they had that big 10-game winning streak, and that got them back into the hunt. But they're far from safe by any stretch. Like they wake up today and they're 4 points ahead of Toronto. Boston's 1 point back of them, right? And Buffalo's got the number 1 wildcard spot, but they're only 2 back of the Montreal Canadiens now. That was the old proverbial 4-pointer for the Sabres. And I'm like, I was trying to look back to other years because they haven't even been in the race in a long time. That's one of the most important regular season wins for the Sabres in a long, long time.
It is. It is, because I think it would have, and the fact that it happened in regulation is massive.
Yeah.
It just with the way things are now and the way that everything's been so compacted this year, a lot of it's because both teams get a point at least in the games. So to have one of a team you're chasing, to have one of a divisional team that you take care of business in regulation is huge. And the fact of it too is like, what if it went the other way? All that great stuff that Buffalo has done up to this point, if Buffalo would have lost in regulation yesterday, I think that would have been a huge moment for them, obviously in the negative way, because it would have been you've done all this work to get there and you have this speed bump you got to get over, and you can't bottom out on it. And they didn't. So I think, to your point, it's not to say this in a dramatic fashion. That was the biggest game that this franchise has seen in quite some time. They responded really well. Now you're sitting here and you're like, all right, these guys got a fighting chance. Because I still believe there's some other teams here. Like, I don't think Toronto is going to be passive down the stretch. They're going to push here. So when you're sitting here, I think Detroit is going to be in. I think Tampa's going to be in. Montreal has proven me wrong all season long. I think Montreal is going to be in. So there's your three, whether it's those three or Buffalo's in there. Now you're going to talk wild card. I mean, you go over to the Metro, you could look at some of those teams there, but it's like the Toronto Maple Leafs are coming, and I'm not ruling out the Florida Panthers. So like that was a massive game, not just because you're chasing the Montreal Canadiens, but you got these other teams I feel like are coming up in the rearview mirror.
Yeah. Oh, well, you go back to like any season they really haven't been close. The the Buffalo Sabres. Here they are, and they're right in the mix. Right there, it's 50 games. They got 61 points. You know, the most points the Sabres have had here in a long time was 91 back in 2023. Right, like that's. Any other year, they really haven't been remotely close. Like if you look at the years they didn't qualify for the playoffs, they've never had 90 points any other time. They've only had over 85 once, and that was the first year they missed back in 2012. So it's not hyperbole to say that was the biggest game, because even in 2023, I looked at it at the 50 game mark, the Sabres weren't in a playoff spot. They were close. They were in 9th place. They had 56 points after 50 games, and they weren't in a playoff spot. They're in a playoff spot. They're battling a playoff team right in their division who you win the game, and now you're suddenly 2 points back. Like that, for a fan base and an organization that just really hasn't felt this in a long time, Rupper, it's good to see. And I'll say this about the Sabres. They clawed their way back in, and it wasn't just okay, we've won 10 in a row. Right? They won 10, they lost one, then they won 3 in a row. Now they're 7-2-1 in their last 10. Like they continue to keep pace. Now, their division is tough this year because Montreal's playing well, and Detroit's playing well, and Tampa Bay's playing very well, and Boston suddenly, has won, I think, 7 of 8. So it's going to be tight, but it's good to see them not fold over. And something about that team, man. I'm watching the Sabres closer. They're a team that I feel they're gutsy. But you mentioned now you got Toronto starting to find their game. Florida, maybe. Will find their game. So it's not going to be easy. There's still 30 games left. There's lots of time. But for the first time in like 15 years, the Sabres are legitimately in a playoff spot.
And it's crazy because the way the season was going, this is what they needed, this type of run just to get in the conversation. That's all they are right now. They're in the conversation. So I think that's really paramount for them to understand inside that room. I'm sure Lindy Ruff and they're all talking about that. We haven't done shit yet. Like we're not, you know what I mean? Like we got to keep, I don't know if they have to keep up this. I mean, if they can keep up this pace, yep, they're in. They might win the division if they keep up this pace, but it probably won't look exactly like this. But if they keep this thing going, here's the one thing with them, and this is coming from a guy who said burn this thing down about 2 months ago. They have had a massive year by Samuelsson on the back end. So you've got these guys that are in place here. You've got Power, you got Dahlin, you got Samuelsson, you got Bo Byram there. Like you've got these pieces where you've got a good core on your back end. You've got your goalie and UPL. Now you're starting to see some other things come into place. I love the addition, just having Jason Zucker there. He's been incredible as a veteran leader on that team. But you got that new deal for Josh Doan. Fantastic. Think about that for a second. Like we haven't seen much of Michael Kesselring this year, But I remember thinking back over the last number of years, whether it was Utah or back in Arizona, he's really nice. Like, he's been banged up this year, dealing with an ankle injury. So I don't think Buffalo fans have really seen that yet, but that's a really good defenseman that can be effective for you as well. They won that trade. Like, I know Peterka goes the other way, but you get Josh Doan and what he's doing. Now you got him on a 7-year deal. You got Michael Kesselring. And then I all of a sudden think that in about a 2-month span, I was like, this is going to stink for these guys. This is another one of those years. They're going to lose Alex Tuch in free agency. I don't think so anymore. I mean, Alex Tuch is from Syracuse. He loves to play for the Sabres. And I think you're starting to look at this team and be like, they might have something special here moving forward. I think they end up getting Alex Tuch signed. So what a wild stretch this has been in Buffalo. And I kind of want to see it continue, to be honest.
Well, yeah, because it started with the 10-game winning streak, but it's extended because in their last 21 games, they're now 17-3-1. They got the most points in the NHL over that time. The only team with the better points percentage is Tampa, but they played 2 fewer games. They'd have to win both of their games and end up with 1 more point. So they have been very, very good. And, you're not going to win 17 out of every 20 games. That's obvious. So I think there's going to be a little bit of a dip here, but they've extended that 10-game winning streak and followed it up with another really solid stretch of games. And that's what you got to do now if you're Buffalo. And I'll be curious, like Jarmo Kekalainen, he could be in addition mode rather than subtraction mode for the Sabres, right? And I don't know how big, to be honest. Like, I wouldn't sell the farm yet to if I'm the Buffalo Sabres, but sometimes, Rupper, you know what? You got to make a move that just sends a message to your guys like, hey, we believe in you guys. We're not going to add like a top line guy, but maybe we could add a really good third line player who's got some pedigree a little bit. Like, don't do what Steve Tambellini did when he added Jared Smithson in 2012. Like, that was supposed to be a trade deadline. That might go down as one of the worst trade deadline acquisitions in the history of the NHL.
All right, wait. What was that one again? I remember Jared Smithson, but what was the deal?
So the Edmonton Oilers, obviously they hadn't been in the playoffs. So they were in the playoffs, and that was in the shortened season, right? So the shortened season comes, you've got the deadline, you got like 13, 14 games to go, and people are like, hey, Edmonton's got to add someone. They had Jared freaking Smithson, and no offense to Jared Smithson, it's not his fault. I hope he's doing great. But like, this guy was a borderline NHL player. And he's going to come in and be a difference maker. And hey, Edmonton just fell apart down the stretch. I think they won 1 of 12 games and, limped out. So even if they would have added someone better, but I was just looking back and be like, if you're in the room and you're like, who did we add? Like, no offense, most guys in the league probably didn't even know who Jared Smithson was, right? Like, it wasn't that. So just don't do that, right? Better to do nothing than do something like that.
Oh, I love that. That's a name from the past.
Yeah. So, and hey, like, I don't like, it's not his fault. It was just like, as a manager, you've been in the room. Like, I know players watch, they know what's going on. When they see other teams making trades and their team's good, they all of a sudden are like, what the hell is our GM doing? Like, look at Dylan Larkin last year. He did not pull any punches. Yeah. He was like, hey, what are we doing here?
I love the trade deadline for the reason of this is how you truly know what your management thinks of you is a group.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so because every management and coach is going to come into the room, regardless of whatever your situation is throughout the year, and be like, we believe in you. Of course you do. You guys assembled this team. You coach this team. We believe in you. We think we can get this done. You wouldn't be here if it, and that's like, like, as a player hearing that, it's like, yeah. But that's the moment where if you're a team that's on the bubble and they make a move that you're like, all right, they do believe that we got something going here. But then on the same note, when something doesn't happen, you're like, this isn't, we don't have the endorsement of our management. And, it could piss you off. It could do whatever. Maybe it's the right call and maybe it can spur you on. But I always found that was the best time to really evaluate how they evaluate our hockey club.
Yeah. Actions always speak louder than words. That is completely very true. Let's bring in Pat Puff, who is out in Jasper, getting ready for a little pond hockey tournament. Puffer, how are you, man?
Oh, I'm doing great. Impossible to complain waking up in Jasper. I mean, You wake up in a king-size bed. You got the waterfall showers. You step out of the room, mountains everywhere.
What's your thread count? Is it Rutgers quality of thread count?
Yeah, it's top notch here. Of course, they're gonna set you up with the best, and I get to wear my favorite sweater. I'm super excited to play some hockey later today.
That's a nice sweatshirt there.
Yeah, so it's a good day. Impossible to complain. But today, I've got fill in the blank for you. A presentation of Bet365. Whatever the bet, it's never ordinary. Bet365. Download the app. Get in on the game. Use code NATION. Bet365 must be 19 or older. You guys talked a lot about Jackson Lacombe tapping in for Seth Jones with Team USA. I'm curious, though, if we jump over to the Canadian side of things, if a D-man goes down in Canada right now, who are you giving the nod to, Gregs?
Jacob Chychrun. I thought he had a very good chance to make that team originally. He would probably be my first guy in line.
Does it, for me, it's situational probably. I mean, Chychrun would be
like if it's Makar, then if Makar goes down, it's Evan Bouchard because you need an offensive defenseman.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So if you're losing a premium offensive defenseman, even though Cale Makar could do other things, I'm not labeling him as just that, then yeah, Evan Bouchard, and it's a right-hand shot, that makes sense. Chychrun could do a little bit of everything, though. So I like Chychrun. I wish I could give a different answer, but I think Jacob Chychrun would be that one. I'm trying to think of some other options off the top of my head that would be kind of in the mix right there. But I'd probably go with that. And but all these decisions, I think we're starting to learn, is based off of what your needs are situationally. And, Bill Guerin from the U.S. side said, like, if it was about all-star games, we wouldn't have we wouldn't need a GM for this. You could just read the stat line and just grab the top guys. So, I would say probably Chychrun, unless it's solely offensive and you need someone to drive the power play. That's Evan Bouchard.
Another guy like the Matt Schaefer, you probably get some looks there potentially. But if you lose a defenseman, unless it's Cale Makar, I think the other guys would replace him are currently the 7 and 8, and the guy you bring in would then become your 7 or number 8, right? I don't see them, and unless it's Makar who gets hurt. I don't see because then Bouchard, they would need him. They need a guy to run the power play. He's an elite power play guy. Other than that, I think if anybody else gets injured, it's probably going to be the number 7 or 8 guy who they have penciled in that moves into the 6, and the guy they bring to the team then becomes 7 or 8.
I think that's totally fair. Second question I have for you, and it's going to sound a little bit weird, so I'm going to try and phrase it properly, but which team is winning too much? Because obviously you don't want to throw a season away. You don't want to lose on purpose. Tanking gets thrown around, but which team is digging themselves into a deeper hole this season by, raising their draft, or I should say lowering their draft pick? Whereas teams like Winnipeg, they'll be okay next year. They're just kind of they're not in a retool by any means. Teams like Calgary, maybe they're digging themselves a deeper hole by, lowering their draft pick. So to you guys, which team is winning too much this year for their own good? We'll start with you, Rob.
So I'm going to go on a little different way of taking that. And I think what they're going through right now is exactly what they need. I'm going to say Colorado. So, and I mean it from this standpoint of this year. They need some adversity. They're going through it right now. I think it's the best thing for them. And I know team wants to lose. Every player wants to win every single game. But for them to run away with, and they still are, the only bad thing is that Dallas has struggled too, more so where there's a decent gap. I kind of want to see, I think Colorado going at the pace they were and absolutely annihilating everybody in the standings was not going to serve them well to be ready for the playoffs, because that's where those bad habits creep in, and bad habits can creep in, and you can have bad games and still win 5-1. Like that's something that it's tough to address inside a locker room. Is we can be doing not the right things and still win because we're so talented. So we've seen teams that's maybe caught up to over the years, whether it's the Bruins or the 19 Tampa Bay Lightning. So that would be the team on the other end of the spectrum. As far as teams maybe that are hurting themselves, I love what Nashville's doing. I really, really, really do. I just think it was a better spot for their franchise long term when they were losing and everybody was talking about their players and how readily available or what teams would give up for a Ryan O'Reilly, a Steven Stamkos. Hell, we heard Phil Forsberg's name brought up. And I was sitting there thinking, like, this is probably the best thing for Nashville, and I love it. And if I was a coach of that team or management or a player on that team, you're doing what you want to do. You want to win. But I just don't think that team is what we're seeing as potentially a playoff team. They're more of a team that needs to do a rebuild.
Well, that's for me, it's the Seattle Kraken. And I know that the West, like Seattle looks and says, hey, what are you talking about? We're in a playoff spot right now. It's 49 games. They are, right? San Jose's tied with them. LA's tied with them. Nashville's a point back of them. Heck, the Chicago Blackhawks are there. Even the Winnipeg Jets are only 6 points out of a playoff spot, oddly enough, with 30 games to go, which means they're still not out of it yet. But and the good news is all those teams, like Vancouver is the one team that's kind of solidified themselves as the cellar dweller, right? Like they've got a pretty good lead now, 7 points on everybody else to have the best odds. And St. Louis is where they're at. Calgary's got the bottom, but to me, it's the Seattle Kraken. Like now I'm hearing, they might be looking to add. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you're not good enough. You're older. You should be looking like Jamie Alexiak. They've got lots of defensemen. I'm trading him. He's going to have lots of value. Boom. Jordan Eberle, Schwartz, like you're going to keep these guys for what? So you can battle at the bottom end of the murky middle? Like, no, I think Seattle Kraken, and I know Rupper said it, you never ask players to lose. I get it. But management can look and say, you can help yourself say, if I get rid of some of my players to help our future, that will help us lose. So that's what you got to do. If they're going to add, I think that, like, great, they might make the playoffs and be the number 8 seed. And then what's the great line from Daryl Sutter? Well, that'll be a waste of 8 days. So that's basically what it would be, right? Like, you think Seattle's going to go in and take on Colorado? And Kraken fans, I know you won in 2023. This is not 2023. Okay. It's not even close. So don't do it. That will be a mistake.
Hey, what you mentioned Daryl Sutter, what he said, that was against Colorado. What do you think he'd say about Colorado now? You know what I mean? How much different Colorado is as a team now. Well, I think we get even more colorful comment on that one.
Yeah, it would be like 8 days and a few mercy rules. Because I'm sorry, the number 8 seed in the West this year, unless Colorado has some big injuries, not happening.
Yeah, I think those are perfect. Those are perfect answers. Kind of the two I expected you to say. I think Nashville is the one for me, and I really like where you went with Colorado with that one, Rupp, and it kind of ties into my third question. I'll keep this one easy for you because McKinnon tied at 85 points. So keeping it simple, fill in the blank. Who's going to finish the season with more points? This might divide you guys, or I'm curious if you pick the same player.
Go ahead, Greg.
I'm actually going to take Nathan McKinnon. I'm going to say Nathan McKinnon. He's never won the Art Ross. And don't tell me that individual records don't matter. BS. When you're the best of the best, you want, and McDavid wants to win another Art Ross. Of course, he wants to push closer to Lemieux and Gretzky. Of course he does. It makes perfect sense. But I think it's going to be McKinnon. I could be wrong. I don't know why that is. The only thing is McDavid historically in March goes off. It's actually his best month of the year. So I'm probably going against. But look at it. Right now, they're tied in points, but McKinnon has 4 games in hand. And it's the 4 games in hand that I'm going to give him the advantage.
Yeah. I want to say McDavid, but I'm going to have to go with McKinnon because of what you said. And also, the games are one thing that's huge, but then also I hate to punish players in these things because of who they play with, but he's got more support. He's got more support. Like there's games where, this team can score in Colorado. They can score 6 goals and McKinnon have a point. Usually doesn't happen when they get 6, usually gets multiple points, but there's not as much pressure on him than it is Connor McDavid. Like we could see some nights where Edmonton, doesn't do much offensively, and it's all on Connor McDavid. So, I'll probably say Nate McKinnon on that one.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The 4 games in hand is massive. As a homer, I'm cheering for Connor, but it's going to be fun watching both of them either way. But I think your answers are fair. That's all I have for you guys. Fill in the blanks, brought to you by Bet365.
Yeah, 4 games in hand is a big deal. Right now, will McKinnon be rested? McDavid, if depending on where they are in the standings, probably both guys going to rest a game or 2 here. I would think maybe even as early as coming out of the Olympic break. We'll see. But The other thing is like McKinnon's, he's still maintained that 8-goal lead in the Rocket, right? Like the Art Ross is close, but the Rocket 8 goals there really hasn't been. I think the closest McDavid got once was 7 or 6. That they haven't really been able to close that gap when it comes to the Rocket for McKinnon, who obviously right now is on pace for 50. And I think if my math is correct, I think he's the only guy on pace for 50 goals. Like 50 goal scorers are becoming less and less again now in the National Hockey League, which selfishly for me, I think is bad for the league. I'd like to see more guys at 50.
I thought the way the season started, we'd be at a different place, I think, with that number, but we're not. So it was funny. I had at the beginning of the year, for whatever reason, I actually didn't think Buffalo was going to be doing what they're doing right now. But by doing that, not being a good team, sometimes you see a lot of points coming out of a team because, kind of loosey-goosey hockey and not much matters. I had Tage Thompson winning the Rockets. So when I see him scoring and him going, I'm thinking like, all right, but then I forget that Nathan McKinnon's like way ahead of everybody else.
12 goals ahead.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
No,
it's going to be tough.
Hey, speaking of goals, Steven Stamkos had a really slow start. He's up to 24 goals, had that huge hat trick again for Nashville to maybe do what you're saying they shouldn't be doing, but a big come from behind win. Man, the Senators in a world of trouble. They can't get saves when they want. They have a 3-0 lead and they blow it. But what do you make of Stamkos and the Predators? And if you were Nashville, Roper, he's got 2 years left. Like I'm not retaining more than at most $2 million, if I even consider. But even Stamkos's play, I think, has put himself back in the conversation of teams if they're looking for a goal scorer to say, geez, we got to consider Steven Stamkos because he's been one of the hottest shooters in the NHL here for the last 2 months.
Yeah, I find it fascinating when we talk about Nashville because they're in a spot that true self-evaluation is so tough. And I don't think I think it's tough for teams to truly have that. And they're going to tell you, you're evaluating all the analytics, you have your big powwows and you're talking all this stuff through. But like just to sit here, I think this is a really good spot for Nashville to talk to Stammer and see where the interest is, because of those numbers you see on your screen, there's a lot of teams that could use Steven Stamkos. There's just his pedigree in general. But he's been awesome. I mean, it says right there, can he get 40? Like, yeah. Like, I think he can. Like, will he? We'll have to see. But this is a player that he looked out of sorts early on in the season. And this dates back to last year where he didn't look great either. So you're thinking this is just how it's going to be in Nashville. So you almost have to sit there and look at it from the standpoint where, I don't know. I don't know the answer to this, but I would assume just from covering Steven Stamkos over his career, the guy wants to win. If there can be a position where he can go on a playoff team or a contender, absolutely, I think he would waive to go do that. And you're in a position where it's kind of found money in some regards if you're Nashville, because the last year plus didn't look good. Now you've got him playing a good brand of hockey. Like, this might be the time to do something, but it's really tough because your team is in the thick of it. And a big reason why is because of Stammer and other players on that team stepping up. But that's where this self-evaluation is so important, not to get the blinders on from the day-to-day involved with an organization, just to see what's best for us moving forward. I think it's to move Steven Stamkos.
Now, you look since December 1st, most goals in the NHL, McDavid 19, Stamkos, McKinnon, Hyman 18. And you know who's fifth since December 1st? Might surprise some people. And American listeners might be pretty excited to hear. Brock Nelson, 16 goals since December 1st. So he is top 5 in the NHL in that time. And they're going to need some guys getting up to the Olympics. But Brock Nelson's really found his game. Steven Stamkos has found his game. And I just wonder, Rupper, if their mindset changes at all in Nashville. But something tells me, Rupper, they're going to think, no, we're a playoff team now. And we're going to keep Stamkos.
I would agree with that. I think that's what they're going to do. And it's tough, too, because you want to get in the playoffs. And if the one thing that you hear time and time again is teams and players say, we just got to get in. We just got to get in. We just got to get in. And we've seen teams that do just get in and go on runs. I mean, the Florida Panthers just got in. You go back to the LA Kings, like they were the poster child of just getting in. Yeah, no, it's true. But there's a lot of teams. Every year there's teams that just get in. And if you're going to cherry pick the odd years where a team has something, then that'll fit your narrative. But I think it's you got to be able to see that you're not a team that's probably going to contend.
No, I totally agree with you. Rupper, great pod, buddy. Have yourself an awesome weekend. Enjoy the football playoffs. Enjoy the NHL weekend. And we'll see. We had some trades this week. Maybe we'll get a few more leading up to the Olympic break and hopefully no more injuries. Team Sweden has just been decimated. Jonas Brodin is out. They haven't announced his replacement yet. Little different strategy than Team USA. Maybe they're waiting. They don't know about Hedman. Erik Karlsson came back. William Nylander is still out. So Team Sweden, man, a battle of attrition. Now, they've got some good defensemen. You could easily put in Lindholm. You could put in Ekholm, although the coach doesn't seem to like him. You could put in the big man from Detroit, Svensson. The guy's huge, really mobile. So they've got a lot of depth on their blue line. But if you use Willie Nylander for that team, they don't have the offensive depth compared to their defensive depth. So that's something to watch for sure. And still nothing new on Braden Point for Team Canada. They haven't announced it because they don't really know yet. I would think he'd have to play a game before they break on February 5th, but we'll see. I hope for his sake he can play, but man, that injury did not look good. So we'll keep to monitor all of that. Have a great weekend, everyone. Patty, have good stuff at Jasper. Don't break a leg. Have a good time. And that's the rundown brought to you by Bet365.
Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.